Imagine a monk, right? Like someone completely enlightened, just fundamentally at peace with the entire universe.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
Now, put a tailored suit on him, drop him right into a Fortune 500 board meeting, and have the CEO publicly pass him over for a promotion he worked, incredibly hard for.
Oh, wow. That is...
Does his enlightenment survive that exact moment?
Yeah, that is the ultimate stress test for any philosophy, really.
Yeah.
Because it's relatively easy to be unbothered by the world when you're sitting alone on a mountain miles away from civilization.
Right. Totally.
And it is an entirely different undertaking when your livelihood, your social status, and, well, your inbox are all actively demanding your immediate attention.
And welcome to the Deep Dive. We are exploring a super fascinating clash of worlds for you today.
We really are.
So our source material is a transcript from a 2026 event at IIM Bangalore, which, if you don't know, is one of India's premier and most hyper-competitive business schools.
Absolutely cutthroat environment.
Exactly. And we're looking at this deeply philosophical discussion between Acharya Prashant. He's a widely followed spiritual leader and actually a former IIT and IIM alum himself, and Professor Trilishan Sastry.
Right, who is a veteran academic there. He spent decades navigating that exact high-pressure environment we're talking about.
So our mission today is to figure out how to extract some actionable wisdom from this clash. Like, how do we navigate career ambitions and find our true calling in this tech-obsessed world?
To give you a solid foundation here, their entire dialogue centers around the application of Vedanta. Well, if you're familiar with the term, Vedanta is this ancient Hindu philosophical tradition. It's rooted in the Upanishads, and historically people often associate it with renouncing the material world, right?
Like retreating to an ashram and just praying.
Right. But Acharya Prashant completely dismantles that passive interpretation right out of the gate.
He really does. He frames it as an incredibly active, almost combative pursuit. He describes Vedanta not as some escape from reality, but as the rigorous process of earning the qualification to call oneself a conscious being.
Earning being the operative word there, I think.
Yeah.
Because the core argument he makes is that the default state of human existence is deeply mechanical. Like, if we aren't highly self-reflective, we are essentially walking through our lives and our careers, honestly, as material pieces operated by unseen strings.
Just totally on autopilot.
Exactly. We think we're making independent choices, but we're actually just reacting to, unknown masters.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because to figure out how to become a truly conscious being, we first have to look at the mechanics of why we feel so lost in the first place.
Right.
Like, why do intelligent, super capable people so often feel like puppets in their own careers?
Well, that brings us to a really foundational concept in their discussion, which is paradharma.
Paradharma.
Yeah. In Sanskrit, this translates roughly to a borrowed responsibility or an alien nature.
An alien nature, so like something that isn't yours.
Exactly. And the psychological mechanism here is crucial. Our ego, our sense of I, is fundamentally insecure.
Oh, totally.
It knows deep down that it's temporary and fragile. So to avoid facing that terrifying emptiness, it constantly tries to fill the void by grabbing onto whatever identity is handed to it from the outside world.
So it just hoards external markers. Like, we attach ourselves to prestigious universities or really impressive job titles or a specific neighborhood.
Yeah, the nice car, the zip code.
Right, just hoping those things will provide some sort of solid foundation for our identity.
Precisely. But the trap of paradharma is that we allow these clever, eager outside forces like society, our parents, our peers, corporate advertising, to just implant a definition of success in our heads.
Like downloading a virus.
Basically. They hand us a map and say, this is who you are and this is your ultimate destination. And it could be achieving a highly quotable CTC, cost to company figure. Or it could be a perfectly planned trajectory right into middle management.
And rather than taking the time to actually observe our own inner nature, we just blindly accept the map.
We just take it and run.
It's like wearing someone else's prescription glasses and then wondering why you still have a massive headache.
Oh, that's a perfect analogy.
Like, how do we actually take those glasses off then? How do we find what the sources call our swadharma, our true native calling?
So the sources describe swadharma as medicine for the deluded one.
Medicine.
Yeah. I mean, you don't need medicine if your system is running perfectly, right? But since most of us are operating on these false, borrowed identities, these wrong prescriptions, we need swadharma to cure the misalignment.
Okay, so how does that actually work in practice?
It's the active process of stripping away those external dependencies. And Professor Sastry provides some really vivid real-world examples of people who managed to do this.
Right, he talks about that Swiss lady.
Yes, the Swiss lady of Indian origin. He met her while doing social work in a really remote tribal area.
And she had lived this incredibly comfortable life in Switzerland, right?
She had. But she realized through intense introspection that her environment was essentially paradharma for her. It was a borrowed map.
Wow.
She just moved to India, embedded herself in tribal social work, and he says she spent her days with a genuine, unshakable smile on her face. She totally defied the standard expectation of what a successful European citizen should be doing.
He also mentions Sachin Tendulkar, right? The legendary cricketer.
He does, yeah. Sachin just knowing at like 10 years old that all he ever wanted to do was play cricket.
But I think the most relatable example for anyone in the corporate world is his former colleague at IIM.
Oh, that story is so powerful. This brilliant professor who realized his true calling, his swadharma, at that specific stage in his life, was to care for his aging parents.
Including his 100-year-old father, I think.
Exactly, and his in-laws.
Yeah.
And to do that, he had to move back from America and actively sacrifice his upward career momentum.
Which is terrifying for most people.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
He accepted lower pay, fewer promotions, went to a different institution, all because his internal alignment was suddenly crystal clear.
And the fascinating part is the psychology behind it, right? Because he wasn't miserable about the lost promotions.
Not at all.
Because he wasn't running that corporate operating system anymore. He didn't feel deprived of status because status was no longer his core metric for existing.
He stripped away the dependency on that map that says always climb the ladder, and he replaced it with an action that brought genuine internal peace.
I mean, that level of internal alignment sounds incredibly liberating.
It really is.
But I do have to push back here for a second, because stepping off the societal map is messy when your literal physical survival is tied to it.
Sure.
Like, we work in corporate structures that are entirely built on hierarchies. You are literally ranked against your peers.
Oh, yeah, constantly.
So how do you maintain this inner Vedantic peace when the economic system demands that you constantly prove you're more valuable than the person sitting in the cubicle next to you?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, we really have to look at the two distinct levels of reality discussed in the source material. They explain this brilliantly to address that exact friction.
Okay, lay it out for us.
So there's the Vyavaharika level.
Vyavaharika.
Right. Which is the practical, transactional world we experience daily. And then there's the Paramarthika level, which is the absolute fundamental truth.
So the practical world versus the absolute truth.
Correct. Now, at the practical experience level, the Vyavaharika differences absolutely exist. And they're necessary.
Like, we need differences to function.
Exactly. In fact, our ego actually requires separation to function at all. The speaker makes this really profound observation. He says, I only exist if I am separate from this chair.
Right. The ego's entire architecture is built on dividing the world into me and not me, or, above me and below me.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the ego just naturally superimposes those divisions onto the corporate ladder. It looks at the org chart and says, well, I am a senior director. Therefore, I have fundamentally more existential worth than the junior analyst.
Which is such a toxic way to live.
It conflates utility with fundamental worth. But at the Paramarthika level, the absolute truth, there is zero separation.
Zero?
None. Acharya Prashant uses a really compelling scientific analogy here. He says modern physics dictates that all seemingly different objects in the universe are ultimately composed of the exact same fundamental particles.
So if you strip away the corporate branding, the job title, the tailored suits...
We are all fundamentally similar units of biology. As he puts it, we're all just moving biochemical streams.
Biochemical streams, I like that. And Professor Sastry adds that great natural metaphor to it, too.
The tree analogy.
Yeah, he says to think of a tree, the leaves and the flowers look completely different from one another, right? And they serve entirely different utilities for the plant. But they're undeniably expressions of the exact same underlying reality.
It's a beautiful way to look at an organization, really.
It is. It's beautiful to think of my colleagues and me as equal biochemical streams belonging to the same tree. But, and here's my Tuesday morning pushback, my boss still decides my bonus.
Right.
A bad performance review still impacts my ability to pay my mortgage. So how does knowing I'm a biochemical stream actually help you when you're terrified about corporate restructuring?
Well, it helps because it fundamentally reframes your mental relationship to that hierarchy. The resolution the sources offer is that Vedantic equality does not mean ignoring practical reality.
So you still have to do your job.
Obviously. Inequality of function absolutely exists. A CEO and an intern have wildly different utilities, different responsibilities, and different impacts on the business.
Right. You can't just walk into the CEO's office and say, hey, we are both biochemical streams, so I'm taking your chair.
Exactly. The practical transaction.
Got it.
The goal is transcendence, not negation. You fully acknowledge the practical hierarchy, the Vyavaharika. You do your job and you do it well. But you refuse to let those external corporate ranks define your fundamental inner worth.
So you're creating like an internal firewall.
Yes. The hierarchy exists in the office, but it does not exist in your soul. You suffer deeply when you allow a bad performance review to dictate your value as a conscious being.
But creating that firewall is incredibly difficult, though, because when your rent and your ego are entirely tied to that ladder, the desperation to climb it pushes people to compromise their morals all the time.
Oh, constantly.
Which brings us directly to the source's discussion on the CV dilemma.
Yes, the timeless conflict between what we do and what we believe we are.
Exactly. The moderator of the panel brings up this situation that I think is universally understood. What happens when our actions like, say, padding a resume, or lying to a recruiter about our current salary, or cutting ethical corners for a promotion? What happens when that contradicts our deeply held values, like believing we're an honest person?
What's fascinating here is Acharya Prashant's radical take on this exact dynamic. He argues that your actions actually never contradict your values.
Wait, really, never?
He says it's a psychological impossibility.
But wait, if a candidate truly believes they're fundamentally honest, but then they intentionally inflate their sales numbers on a resume to secure a job, conventional wisdom says their action directly contradicted their values. Prashant is saying that's an illusion.
He's saying it's a contradiction of your professed values, sure, but not your actual values.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. If you lie to get a prestigious job, your professed public value might be, I am a truthful person. But your actual practice value is, I am someone who desperately needs social validation and a massive salary.
Oh.
That's right. Your action of lying perfectly aligns with your true internal priority.
That is a brutal mirror to hold up.
It forces absolute accountability. He uses a very sharp mechanism to explain this. He says, if I am the hungry one, food is valuable.
The hungry one.
Right. A value doesn't just exist in a vacuum. It requires a valuer. If your core inner identity, the valuer, is someone who feels existentially empty without a vice president title, then you will naturally value that title way above honesty.
The action is just an accurate reflection of the inner identity.
Exactly.
So if we want to change our toxic behaviors, we can't just try to white-knuckle it and force ourselves to behave better.
Yeah.
We actually have to interrogate the valuer.
Yes. You have to fix the actor behind the action.
We have to figure out why our inner identity is so desperately hungry for that specific external validation in the first place.
And Professor Sastry highlights our collective refusal to look at this inner actor with this hilarious, but honestly ultimately tragic anecdote about a guy he knows in Bangalore.
Oh, I remember this.
Yeah, this man constantly complains about his miserable life. He has this highly stressful 90-minute commute each way in brutal Bangalore traffic. He completely despises his job, and yet he refuses to change a single variable.
Because his actual values are completely tied up in his lifestyle, right?
Exactly. He has an enormous mortgage on a fancy house in a gated community. He sends his kids to these wildly expensive elite schools, and he feels this absolute burning need to take international vacations to Europe every single year.
Just to post the photos on WhatsApp for his social circle?
Literally just for that.
Right.
So when Professor Sastry points out the really obvious solution, like, hey, sell the huge house, move to a smaller apartment 5 minutes from the office, send the kids to normal schools, and instantly reclaim your peace of mind, the man aggressively refuses.
Because doing that would force him to admit that his true values are status and appearances, not peace of mind.
Exactly. He would rather play the victim and blame the Bangalore traffic than take responsibility for his own twisted valuer.
You know, it really makes me think of a car's dashboard.
How so?
Like, if your engine is critically failing, a warning light flashes on the dashboard, right?
Sure.
The chronic stress, the lying on the resume, the miserable 3-hour daily commute, those are the flashing warning lights. But instead of opening the hood to actually rebuild the engine, which is our inner identity, we just slap a piece of black tape over the warning light.
Oh, that's so true.
We try to change the surface action without ever addressing the core mechanical failure.
We want the pain to go away without having to undergo the surgery of self-inflection.
Exactly. But fixing that engine, like fundamentally changing your inner identity, that requires intense, sustained introspection. And how do you even cultivate that today?
It's tough.
We're swimming in a digital ocean explicitly designed to fracture our attention 1,000 times a day. Our self-esteem gets battered by every unread email, every aggressive Slack message, every time a post doesn't get enough likes. How do we build a healthy spiritual practice and maintain human dignity without just throwing our smartphones straight into the ocean?
Well, the sources address this modern reality head-on through this concept called sthitaprajna.
Sthitaprajna. Let's ground that term. What does that actually look like mechanically?
So it means being well settled, firm, and entirely unshakable in your inner knowledge. Acharya Prashant makes this crucial distinction regarding dependence.
Okay.
He notes that our physical condition will always naturally depend on the outside world. Like if the temperature in the room goes up, your biology will react and you'll physically sweat.
Right, that's unavoidable.
Totally. But your inner center, your core identity, should never operate like a thermometer reacting to external happenings.
Oh, that makes sense. It's the difference between reacting physically to your environment and letting your environment dictate your fundamental self-worth.
Exactly. He points out how hopelessly dependent our inner lives have become. Like an unknown face walks up and praises you and you feel totally euphoric.
Yeah.
But then you lose some money, or a stranger criticizes you online, and your self-esteem totally collapses. We allow these unpredictable digital events to constantly uproot our inner center.
And the sources argue this happens because modern education provides us with this massive surplus of gyan,
Right, gyan.
which is external technical knowledge, like learning how to code or how to build financial models. But it completely ignores pragya.
Right. Pragya is self-knowledge. It is the observer turning the lens inward. Without pragya, you might be a highly skilled, highly paid executive, but you're still just a puppet reacting to stimuli.
Just reacting to the Slack messages.
Yes. And Professor Sastry uses this very practical, very humorous metaphor for what anchored pragya looks like in the real world.
The Bangalore cows.
Yes, the Bangalore cows. He jokes that when you see a cow sitting peacefully in the absolute middle of a chaotic, blaring Indian intersection, that cow is the ultimate picture of sthitaprajna.
It's just so funny to picture.
Right. The traffic is swirling dangerously. Hundreds of horns are honking. Chaos is literally everywhere. But the cow remains completely and totally undisturbed at its core.
I just love that image because it is so incredibly practical. Cultivating self-knowledge isn't about stopping the traffic. You can't stop the emails or the algorithms or the corporate pressures.
You really can't.
The world is going to swirl around you aggressively. It's about becoming the cow. It's about anchoring your awareness so deeply that the noise simply passes around you.
As Sastry summarizes it, technology is fundamentally just like fire. You can use fire to cook your meals and warm your home, or you can use it to burn yourself alive.
Wow.
Your level of introspection and self-knowledge determines entirely how you interact with the fire of the modern digital world.
So what does this all mean for us? Like, we've talked about stripping away the borrowed operating systems, separating our utility from our intrinsic worth, confronting our actual values behind our actions, and anchoring ourselves in the noise.
It all really builds toward the ultimate practical question. How do you actually arrive at that sweat heart we talked about at the very beginning?
Right.
How do you uncover your true, spontaneous calling in life?
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because the answer they arrive at is entirely counterintuitive.
It really is.
You do not find your Swadharma by aggressively planning it out or creating a new, better map for your career.
No, because the act of planning implies your insecure ego is still firmly in control.
Right.
It's just desperately trying to secure its future status again.
Exactly. The sources argue you find your true calling simply by rejecting the wrong center. You just have to identify and drop the paratharma.
And the mechanism here is awareness.
Yeah.
Acharya Prashant explained that human consciousness is not designed to tolerate ugliness once it truly sees it.
Once it truly sees it.
Right. When you turn the lens inward and genuinely observe your own borrowed, fearful, and greedy motivations, when you see the machinery of your ego clearly, those motivations naturally dissolve in the light of awareness.
And what is left when that false anxious center dissolves? Just spontaneous action.
Yes.
Natural action that flows directly from who you fundamentally are, interacting flawlessly with the present moment.
He gives a brilliant historical example of this. 2,500 years ago, the Buddha's spontaneous actions, stemming from a pure inner center, was to denounce a decaying religious tradition and walk the earth.
Mm-hmm.
But if that exact same clear, unburdened consciousness were born into a body today, facing our modern complexities, the spontaneous action might look totally different.
Right. Maybe that consciousness would be composing profound literature.
Or Krishna, born today, might be fighting to overhaul the global energy grid rather than, giving a sermon on a chariot.
The external action itself shifts based on the context of the era, but the purity of the source remains identical.
Exactly.
You don't have to desperately search the horizon for the right career move. You just have to clear out the false, borrowed motivations, and the right action will naturally flow out of you.
You stop worrying about the destination and start taking absolute responsibility for the clarity of the traveler.
That is the essence of earning the qualification to be a conscious being.
It really is.
This has been an incredibly dense and rewarding journey. For you listening, we've covered a lot of philosophical ground today.
A ton of ground.
We started by recognizing the borrowed maps, the paradharma, we so often blindly follow. We looked at the mechanics of surviving corporate hierarchies without letting them define our inner worth. We confronted the highly uncomfortable truth that our actions reveal our actual values, regardless of the stories we tell ourselves. And finally, we explored how to cultivate sthitapragya, that unshakable inner stillness amidst the chaotic traffic of our modern lives.
This raises an important question, one that pushes this philosophy beyond just our individual careers.
What's that?
Well, if swadharma is simply what remains after you strip away everything society, your ego, and advertising told you to desire, what happens if we apply that globally?
Oh, wow.
Right. So much of the modern global economy is entirely driven by paradharma. It relies on millions of people buying things they don't actually need, to impress people they don't even like, just to validate a false map. If an entire generation woke up tomorrow, dropped their borrowed desires, and actually found their swadharma, would our current economic machine simply collapse? Or would it finally evolve into something conscious?
That is a staggering thought to consider. Just imagine the impact on how we raise our children, or what industries would instantly vanish if we stopped consuming out of insecurity.
It's wild to think about.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. As they pointed out at the very beginning of that IIM event, the most important high-stakes conversations you will ever have are the ones you have with yourself. Until next time, keep questioning the map you've been handed and see if you can find a little bit of that mountaintop piece right in the middle of your next boardroom meeting.